So in the previous lecture, we have seen about thread priorities and methods used to post thread execution, and in that we have seen the yield method. Okay, now we will see the join method. Okay, so this was the yield method that we have seen, that this method causes the current execution thread to pause, and it is based on priorities, and this was the change in our thread state diagram. Okay, the thread yield. Fine. Now we will see the join method. Now what is a join method? Let me explain you with an example. Okay, there are two friends, for example T1 and T2. Okay, they are in a classroom. They're in a classroom that began from 9 o'clock. So their time is running. So they are in a classroom, correct? Now what is happening is T1 class is over. T1 class is over, but T2 class is still running. So he messaged him. How much time will your class take? So T2 replied that I do not know. So T1 is a good friend. So what he said, I will wait for you. No matter how much time it takes, it is 9 a.m. in the morning and the class was over at 12 a.m. for T1. So he says it can be till 9 p.m. also. So he says, don't worry, I will wait for you. I will wait for you, and then I will start my execution again, and then I will start my work again. Okay, so what T1 is saying, that I will wait for your completion, then after that I will start my execution. So in that scenario we will use join method. So if T1 is a thread and T2 is a thread, what T1 is saying is I need T2 to complete first. I want T2 to complete first, and whatever the output that T2 generates, I will use it and I will start the execution. Maybe this is the reason. Okay, so what is happening here? T1 will wait for T2 to complete its execution, and then it will start its execution again. What is happening? T1 will wait for T2 to complete its execution, and then it will start its execution again. So what is happening here is simple. T1, T2, and T1 has to wait for T2, so it will call T2.join. So T1 will call T2.join. Okay, and as soon as it calls T2.join, T1 will go to the waiting state. So here we will add one more state in our diagram, that is nothing but waiting state. Okay, when T2 completes, a notification goes to the waiting state that it is complete, then T1 can again come and resume the execution. Okay, so T1 has to wait, and T1 has to wait for T2. So T1 will call T2.join. So this is important, do not get confused who function which calls which function. Okay, the one has to wait, call the function on other one thread. Okay, so T2.join. So let's see the points. So if a thread wants to wait until completion of some other thread, then we should go for join method. If a thread T1 wants to wait until completing T2, then T1 has to call T2.join. If T1 executes T2.join, immediately T1 will enter into the waiting state. I have explained to this, and until T2 completes. Once T2 completes, then T1 can continue its execution. Okay, so this is public final void join. This is one of the signature of join. The second signature of join is long millisecond. So what this signature does is one thread will wait for another only for specified milliseconds. So what T1 says to its friend T2 is, I can wait for maximum 3 hours. If your class is over in 3 hours, then we will go together home. If your class is not over, then I will begin my execution. For those scenarios we will use long millisecond, and it is long millisecond, and nanosecond means that it is more exact time. Okay, more strict time. Fine. So this is join method. Now here, as you can see, okay, one more thing can occur. Let me explain you that. So a scenario can occur is this: T1, T2. So T2 class is going on and T1 is waiting. T1 has called T2.join, and he is waiting, and he is standing here and he is waiting. Now T1 girlfriend arrives. So what she says, let's go for a coffee. Now what T1 will say, standard response, that yes, let's go for a coffee. It was in a waiting state, but because there is some interruption, now it is in a waiting state, but because there is some interruption, so T1 will start doing some work. So it will start executing, it will start doing some work because of an interruption. Correct? So what can happen here? Let's see the points. Whenever we are calling join method, there is a chance of interruption, that is interrupted exception. Okay, whenever we are calling join method, there is a chance of interruption. Fine. Therefore, to handle this exception, every join method needs to throw interrupted exception. So all these three methods needs to throw interrupted exception. Okay, so this is interrupted exception, this is interrupted exception. Every join method has a chance of interrupted exception, therefore we have to throw interrupted exception, okay, to catch it. Fine. So let's see the code now. So this is just a template. So we will start it with our child join demo, and here just a simple job that we have seen so many times now. Int I equal to 0, I less than 1000, okay, and I plus plus, fine. Then here just s out join demo, join, or you can just print child join, okay, child join demo. And I, why I just want to know how many times it is, what is the number of times it is executing at once. Okay, so now just simple child join demo equals to ct equals to new child join demo, new child join demo. Okay, this is the object creation, initialization of object, then ct.start. So before start there is just one main thread, and after start there are two threads. Okay, then ct.join, correct. Now see, we have to write this throws interrupted exception. If we do not write this throws interrupted exception, what will happen? See, there is an error here. Now what is the error? Unhandled exception. So either write this in a try or catch block, or simple add the exception to the main one. Okay, then for int I the same code, I equals to 0, I less than 1000, and I plus plus, this s out the main thread. Okay, now here also just print I with this. So what will happen here is, before this there was just one thread, after this there are two threads. This line will definitely be executed by the main thread. So what is happening, main thread is saying to the child thread that I will wait for your completion and then I will begin my own execution. Okay, so the main thread is calling the join function on the child thread. As you can see, ct.join, that is t2.join. This is t1, this is t2.join. So main thread is calling the join function on the child thread that I will wait for your completion, and only after that I will begin my own execution. So for here we can actually know the output beforehand. First child join will execute, after that the main join will execute. Okay, main thread will execute. As you can see here, there will be no interruption between. First the whole child process will execute, and then the main process will execute. Let's see, the child process executing, it will execute till 1000, it will execute till 1000, 0 to 999, that is 1000, and the main thread will execute again from here. There is no, we can here actually define the perfect output, the exact output. Okay, because of the join method. Main thread is waiting for the child thread to completely execute, and then it is executing. So this was the join method. Let's see some more points. So this is the diagram. So I told you a state will be added. So which is the state? Waiting timed, or waiting state, or time waiting state. Why there are two states? In the code you have seen that I haven't given any time. So if I give 1 millisecond only, just 1 millisecond, so now I do not know the output. Okay, because main will only wait for 1 millisecond for the child. So let's see, it will just wait for a single millisecond. So as you can see here, in a single millisecond child demo could run only 10 loops. So after that the main came, then there are simultaneous, then we are on the previous stories. Okay, so it is same. So for 1 millisecond this is the case. If I go for 10 millisecond, maybe more number of times child join will run in the beginning, then again this is the same story, okay. So see, for child join, and then again it is the same story. Fine. So this was the time waiting state. Okay, there are two states, there is a waiting state and a time waiting state. Okay, so why it will come here? Because someone called a join method. Why it will come here? Because someone called a join method. Okay, why it will execute? Either the child thread is completely over, okay, t2 completely executes, or because of the interruption it can come back. Because of the interruption also, I told you, because of interruption it will go again to the execution state, correct? What is the next point? How now, are there any other ways? So yes, time expired. So I have just 1 millisecond, so 1 millisecond expired, so I can again move to the ready state. Okay, so these are the three reasons. The execution of the second thread is over, interruption, and time expired. Okay, for these three reasons my thread can again go back to the ready state. Okay, more points. A deadlock situation can occur if both thread calls join methods on each other. For example, t1 is, and this is t2 called t1.join and t1 called t2.join. so now both t2 is waiting for t1 to execute, and t2 is waiting for t1 to execute, and t1 is waiting for t2 to execute. So both are waiting for each other, so no execution will occur. Hence it is a deadlock like situation. It is a deadlock like situation. The next point is, in this code you can see here the in the beginning main thread executes. So thread.current thread means the main thread, and main thread is calling join function on itself. Main thread is calling join function on itself. That means the main thread is waiting for the main thread to execute. So this is also a deadlock like situation. So just keep these two situations in mind. Okay, whenever you're coding, you have to keep this in mind. Do not be in a deadlock like situation. Okay, main thread is waiting for the main thread to complete, so it is also a deadlock like situation. So this was our join method. So what we have seen in join method is, if some thread wants to wait for another thread to execute first, then it will call join method on that thread. Okay, and these two situations just keep in mind. So this was join method. I hope you understood what join method is. Okay, if someone asks you to explain join method, just give these examples. Okay, just take care of the interrupted exception as well. After join method, what we will see is, we will see the sleep method. What we will see, it is a very simple method, that is sleep, and it is used very frequently. If a thread do not want to perform any operation for a particular amount of time, then we should go for the sleep method. Okay, for a particular amount of time, then we should go for sleep method. That is public static native void sleep. So as you can see here, it is native, that is it is not written in Java, and long milliseconds. So you have to specify the time for which the thread is going to sleep. Okay, is it going to sleep for 1 second, for 2 seconds, for 3 seconds, in milliseconds? Okay, then it is the second one for the exact, for more stricted time, for more strict time. Also sleep can be interrupted. When you are sleeping, you can also get interrupted, so therefore you have to throw interrupted exception, as we have seen in the join method as well. Okay, so let's see a demo for the sleep one. So it is a simple program, so I have already written it, as you can see here. So as you can see, thread.sleep for 3 seconds. Okay, after printing main thread I, you have to sleep for 3 seconds. So let's just now run it. There is no child class here, so let's see. Main thread for 3 seconds, it will wait for to print again. Now for 3 seconds it will wait, means the thread is sleeping for 3 seconds. Okay, and then he is waking up and printing. Then again he is sleeping for 3 seconds and again waiting up for printing. So if I change it to 5, then it will wait for actually 5 seconds. Okay, you can just count those seconds right here, and the number of time it blips the cursor. See, so 1 2 3 4 5, then it print. Okay, so after 5, waiting for 5 seconds, then it will print the main thread. Okay, so this is what thread.sleep is. This is a simple code, you can just write this code down. Okay, so it will print till 10. Fine. Next is interrupt method. So we have seen that sleep can also be interrupted, and what you say, join can also be interrupted. So how can they be interrupted? What is the reason behind they being interrupted? Okay, and is interruption good or bad? What do you think? Is interruption good or bad? Come on, just think about it. So for example, you have a younger brother, for example, correct? And you are there, you have an exam in the morning at 8 o'clock, and you told your younger brother to interrupt your sleep at 7 a.m. at 7 a.m. but he forgot to interrupt your sleep at 7 a.m. correct? So what will be the case now? You will not be able to give your exam. So interruption is not always bad. Okay, it is not always bad. It can be bad or it can be good also. Okay, so what is the point? A thread can interrupt a sleeping thread or a waiting thread by using interrupt method. So this is the interrupt method. Okay, interrupt call will be wasted if the target thread enters termination state without ever sleeping. So if you are not sleeping the whole night, then the interrupt calls will simply be wasted. Then it will be simply be wasted. Correct? Let's move ahead. So let's see an interrupt demo now. Where it is. So as you can see here, this is an interrupt demo. What I have done here is a child thread, and why this try catch block? Because I have to catch the interrupted exception. Okay, because sleep method calls the interrupted exception, therefore I have to do this. So child thread is a thread.sleep. After 2 seconds it will print child thread. Okay, and here I have called on that thread a interrupt. So if it interrupts it, it will get when I got interrupted. Okay, so let's check whether it gets interrupted or not while he is sleeping, whether it gets interrupted or not. So as you can see here, as soon as it sleeps for the first time, it gets interrupted. As soon as it sleeps for the first time, it gets interrupted. But if my thread does not sleep, so this whole thing is not required, because the interrupt call will be wasted now. Okay, so it has to sleep your thread. It has to sleep, or it has to call the join method to get it interrupted. Okay, so This is the use of interrupt method. This is the use of interrupt method. So we have seen the join method, we have seen the sleep method, and now we have seen the interrupt method as well. Okay, so this complete this topic of thread pause. Okay, how you can pause the thread, how you can stop the thread for some amount of time. Okay, and sleep will also go to the waiting state only, so no new state will be added. Sleep will also go to the waiting state only, and interrupt will be there in the waiting state. Fine. So because threads are waiting in the waiting state, so interrupt will go there and it will interrupt that sleep, it will interrupt that waiting. Okay, so this was how many: yield method, join method, sleep method, and the interrupt method. Fine. Thank you.